Alright, and we're back with the next volume. This time it's Magical Girl Raising Project Peaceful Days of 16 Magical Girls. This is another side volume, and interestingly enough, here, it was released to coincide with the anime, and with that being the case, there is well, I guess it's not particularly complicated. These side stories, it's an episodes volume basically, but these side stories are meant to link to the anime and just focus on the original 16 magical girls and their peaceful days. So we go back to Unmarked, that cast, and we get to just experience a little bit more of their characters and their stories, and I'm not complaining about that at all. So we have a few stories to run through here. I'll go ahead down the list, and we'll talk about them. Yeah. First is the Lady Knight's Lonely Battle Director's Cut. This one is another La Pucelle story, and it's basically about Sota, his boy human form, uh, resisting the urges of a middle school boy when it comes to all these pretty and great magical girls around him. He's like focusing on controlling his thoughts since Snow White can read the thoughts around him. There's a goofy misunderstanding that near the end of the chapter about Snow White and him. They're talking about two different things. Snow White's just genuinely concerned for him. Meanwhile, Sota and La Pucelle is like, oh no, she found out I'm horny for magical girls. Oh no. You know, like, he talks about top speed, being casual and hugging and smacking him and all that. The coolness of Winter Prison and, Sister Nana's nonsense fantasies. I think he, like, accidentally touched Ripple's tummy and went, like, it's there's even a whole arc of, like, him dreaming up about the pretty magical girls around End City and Koyuki behind him, just like, is he okay? Um, I mean, it's it's certainly a story. For some reason, La Pucelle really has the, like, suggestive, horny. I mean, it makes sense, right? Middle school boy, and you look at his outfit and his magical girl form, and then his ability, and everything about La Pucelle is not only that noble knight character protecting Snow White, but also the, you know, middle school boyness to it, right? So, double sided coin there. I think La Pucelle's going to stay where they are. Um, at least based off of this story, it was an entertaining read, but didn't do much to go beyond that. Like, somehow I like Utakata more, but I'm just weird like that. Just like Utakata's mysterious bubbles, who knows what's going on with them, right? Who knows what's going on with me, but whatever. Next story was real fun. Top Speed. Uh, this was wonderful. Top Speed having a blast racing her broom around at supersonic speeds. It was actually quite comedic in before that whole zooming nonsense that Top Speed went through, because Ripple, of course, is accompanying her, and surprisingly enough, Magicaloid is. So I actually found a lot of enjoyment in how Magicaloid acted this chapter. I think to, like, the level of maybe here. I don't know. Like, it just kind of gave me more human to the robot, right? Um, she's actually acting out that robotic speech in her form, which kind of gives her like a nerdy flair, which is pretty cute. In other stories, we find out that she just dreams about swimming in a bathtub full of money, which enhances her, character trait of just needing money and wanting money because of her real life situation. I don't know what it was. Magical Lloyd didn't do a whole lot really, besides, like, panic and feel despair riding on Top Speed's broom along with Ripple. Um, But I just kind of grew more of an appreciation for Magical Lloyd because of this chapter. Top Speed remaining in S as always, Ripple remaining where she is. Ripple and Top Speed were real funny this chapter because this is Ripple in Unmarked, right? This is before she simmered down with her attitude and opened up a little more. So Top Speed is like about to get scammed by Magical Lloyd, and Ripple is literally just clicking her tongue at different like how do you say intonations or volumes or styles or pitches. There we go. Took a bit. So like at lower pitches is a no, and like higher pitches is at a yes or something. So that whole tongue clicking language and interpretation and between the two is like super entertaining to me. And if you remember back when I did the unmarked tier list, I said I really liked Ripple's tongue clicking because it was like every time she appeared on screen, she was clicking her tongue over and over. And I like that they kind of brought that spirit back in because we're in Unmarked, and because this is meant to tie in with the anime. Of course, they haven't seen Ripple. Rather, viewers have not seen Ripple without her arm and eye, and more mellow and all that. So this was a nice return to Unmarked Ripple, and I really appreciated it. Um, Next was magical girl tropes. This one was simple. It was basically just about the magical girls posing and shouting out their things, their catchphrases. Snow White wanted to do one, La Pucelle did one, Ripple did one, but Fav saw her and then she got really embarrassed, screaming into her pillow. It was just a cute chapter like that. So I think that was one of the shorter ones. I can't really remember if there was anything notable, but it was just a fun, little yay, just more of the chat between the unmarked girls, which is nice. Next, we have the Yakuza Angel Business. Now, this one's an interesting one. These two, the Twin Peak Angels, have remained here for forever. They have not had any changes at all. And I kind of, you have to consider them as a pair, as one unit, right? Because that's how they're presented in Unmarked, and even in the episodes, side stories that they appear in. This one differentiated them a lot more. I had Minael above Yunael because Minael survived longer, and that kind of resentment and anger kind of let her become more brash in her words and kind of forthright in how she pursued her revenge for Yuna, right? Not that it did much. All she did was turn into a boulder and get her heart crushed by Cranberry, but I digress. Yunael in this story really like placed herself above Minael and like everyone in C for me, which is kind of wild. And I'm maybe just kind of riding off of the high of that and giving her too much credit, but honestly, she's like Churna Mouse level, which is surprising to even me. Because Churna Mouse for me and Restart didn't, she didn't hit that note for me, and Yunael is pretty much the same. But in both of their side stories, you kind of see there's more of a human side to them, and that they care for what they do, even despite whatever nonsense they get up to. So in this one, Yunael, she has the ability to change into any living thing, right? And for this story, she is convinced by Minael to transform into Calamity Mary because they want to scare Ruler, because Ruler is afraid of Calamity Mary, right? Yunael ends up getting wrapped up in all this Yakuza business, and you see her like fight with her inner turmoil of being scared out of her wits and acting as Calamity Mary would, right? She's not perfect at it, and she ends up transforming into a few different things to run and get away, but she's helping people along the way despite all of her self-centered business, if that makes sense, right? So there's a man near the Yakuza factory that, or whatever that story mainly took place, who is suicidal, and Yunayo convinces him to keep living, and also provides him with some financial assistance by stealing the Yakuza's money. And you kind of just see that there is a more human side to her because she's doing this in the midst of danger herself, right? Like she's taking this magical girl thing a little more seriously than Minael. Minael, the whole chapter is doing the usual stick of complaining and, you know, saying no, we should do this, we got to get away, we got to do this for our own, our own well-being and all that. And in Unmarked, Minael is always the first one to talk. She's the older sister out of the two. And then Yunael is always following it up with, wow, you're so magic cool, sis. It's like their whole thing. But in this story, Yunael is the leader of the two. So we get a completely different dynamic. We get a cool dynamic of trying to pretend to be someone you're not. We see a lot more of her power being used in somewhat clever ways. And to extension, Minael can transforming into objects and all that. But so she helps that suicidal man. She also helps, I think, a middle school kid who gets bullied. Um, in the midst of all this craziness, you see that there is some heart there for Yunael. So I was kind of touched. I was kind of surprised. I was not really expecting to feel so differently between the two sisters, right? But that's sometimes what these stories do. And I might have said a time or two ago on this tier list that I really hoped that we would have seen more that helped me care. And I mean, I got half. 50%, I'll take it. Unael, I'll say it with same thing with Churn and Mouse. I was not familiar with your game. They never really had a chance to sign, so I'm glad that we got more of a perspective on her, for sure. Next is The Great Leader's Distress. So this is a ruler story, so I'm gonna like it. Ruler. I was just so happy to read Ruler again. This is more of her, self-centered brattiness, overconfidence, and everything. Where we see more of her human life. She's not from End City. She moved from M, was it, or maybe I'm confusing that with a different place, or a different side story. No, M was for Cranberry Story. That's right. Anyway, Ruler is not from End City. And this was just about her meeting a former coworker in midst of like trying to mentally deal with Team Ruler, like literally outside the family restaurant they were in or something. I'm summarizing the story terribly here, but point is, we see Ruler as Sanai meet her former coworker Yuka Henmi, I think her name was, and Henmi is that chipper, overly familiar that Ruler just kind of does not care about. But we see that Ruler is actually competent in what she does. She was talented in company gatherings. She was valued in the office. Perhaps they realized they lost someone good without giving her the attention she needed. And she was craving that attention so much. That's why she quit her job once she became a magical girl, because she wanted to fulfill her own desires for her own satisfaction, right? Every time I think of Ruler, I'm like, man, it's honestly, I like her about as much as Tama. I restrained myself these past few tier list parts, but the more I think of Ruler, the more I really like her dynamic of an Ice Queen that's defrosting, right? An Ice Queen that's learning, even if she's not realizing it, to accept and understand the people around her. And it's always cut short. In this story, it's cut short. In her life, it's cut short. Unmarked, it always cuts short, because we always get the tease of Ruler being something more than she is. And it's so ironic because she wanted to be more than she was. And it's just such a fun dynamic, and I just like Ruler and her design. So she's going up with Tama. That's just my bias speaking, but I really enjoyed the Ruler story, even if it was simple. I like that we got to see Henley and more of her, human life in comparison to, the magical girl side. So I was glad that we got the Ruler story. I don't really have much to say else besides that, but Ruler's great. Next is the Prince of the Club. So I was reading this volume fast until I got to this chapter. Prince of the Club refers to Weiss Winter Prison. Uh, she is staying where she is. She actually is higher in my eyes now. However, Sister Nana's dropping. I I I I just got annoyed with Sister Nana. I already was like on the fence with her because she was that kind of character who was attempting to be kind for the attention that she would receive from it. You kind of got that feel from the subtext of her dialogue and actions in Unmarked. Um, but here, she's just like vain and mean, and not even considering Winter Prison for the person that she is. And there's obviously development in that somewhat because eventually the two do get together. But I'll give some context. So Sister Nana, this is when both of them are in university, um, in their human forms. Winter Prison is what was her human name? Shizuku Ashu, I think. I'm just gonna call her Winter Prison because it's easier. Winter Prison transfers into this university, and Winter Prison basically looks like her human form in her magical girl form, right? Um, which actually says that she is proud and comfortable with her self-image, which I think is awesome. You go, girl. But anyway, you know, she she transfers in and she ends up joining the same club as Nana does, which is a skiing club which doesn't actually do stuff. Nana only joined that club so the five male students could fawn over her, so she could have that attention that she craved because she's self-conscious about her appearance and her attitude and her weight and all that, right? Um, Winter Prison joining throws off that whole balance, and now they're all fawning over Winter Prison. Not that Winter Prison really pays them any mind, not in a mean way. Just Winter Prison overall is a chill person, does not care necessarily for any popularity that she may receive. Winter Prison is earnest. Nana is not. And just throughout the whole chapter, I was struggling to read it because I was just mad at Nana, which may have been the point, but it gets to the point where Winter Prison is earnestly asking Nana out on a date, and Nana is so wrapped up in her own mindset that she doesn't even notice any of the actions that Winter Prison is trying to do. Nana becomes a magical girl in this story before Winter Prison, right? And then proceeds to go to the date as a magical girl form, pretending she's Nana's friend, which gets Winter Prison understandably mad, and also this she completely misinterprets the situation because Nana is Nana. And then we get at the end, Winter Prison is saying she's trying to make Nana happy and smile and date her. And then I was like, huh? Nana is like, oh, that's what this was all about, but she's still doubtful at the end of the story. And you're supposed to derive your own conclusion. Obviously, they got together. Obviously, Winter Prison found out about everything. And I believe from some other side stories, we know that Nana purposefully... Actually, she went to Magical Lloyd for this. Nana went to Magical Lloyd to make Winter Prison into a magical girl because Nana is, again, so wrapped up in her own fantasies that she drags her partner into the magical girl business. I don't even know if Winter Prison wanted to do that or not. Maybe she did it to make Nana happy, but I just feel bad for Winter Prison. Like, you deserve more than Nana, I think. And that's not to disparage Nana and the self-esteem issues that she does have, right? There are obviously people who struggle with that, but I just could not. I can't in good conscience like Nana as a character that I would support all the way up to BAS. Like, Nana is well written for what she is. However, that does not mean I enjoy her character, right? It's basically the same for Calamity Mary and especially Grimheart, right? They're well written for what their role is, but they just kind of just make me like like grr. So I'll give Nana the respect of being well written and understandable as that vain person, but my heart goes out to Winter Prison, so that's why Nana, you're falling down a tier, unfortunately. You'll go above Sachiko though, because you actually have something too. Sachiko's just there to be a plot device and die on. So you get that at least. No. Next is conditions for an anime adaptation. Now, when I was thinking Peaceful Days of 16 Magical Girls, you could have told me anyone could have appeared, but not. I would have never expected Palette to appear. I saw the introductory arch and I saw a Palette there, and I was like, is that Palette from Magical Daisy? Magical Daisy's mascot character, and yeah. So this is right as the game is starting for Unmarked. Palette goes in and it's like, Cranberry makes awesome magical girls. I'm gonna see if I can scout one out for an anime. And Palette just goes around looking at everyone. He sees like Nana and Winter Person being super duper lovey dovey. He's like, nope. He sees Calamity Mary being who she is, and he's like, nope. He sees Team Ruler, nope. Magical Lloyd being greedy, nope. Hardcore Alice testing her abilities for the first time. It lines up with that on the timeline. And he sees a magical girl being all gory and bloody, and he's like, nope. So it's kind of just like a funny chapter of Palette. We actually get something about Palette though, and a little bit more about just like his status and as a mascot. And he kind of just wants to relive that glory of having an anime like Magical Daisy, which I think is super cool. So he's going to stay right here, actually. He is going to stay right here next to Magical Daisy. However, I'm putting Yunael actually above Magical Daisy. I think that works, yeah. So yeah, that was a fun little chapter. Next is Guns or Roses. This was a Cranberry and Calamity Mary chapter. Cranberry, she's staying the same. The usual. Likes to fight, doesn't like to deal with the nonsense. She basically slaughtered a bunch of magical beasts to her own chagrin because she was on a mission. That's where she went to M City and did all that. And M City is like a rural, valley town. So Calamity Mary, we learn just a little bit more about her. She's actually the first magical girl that Five created in End City. So you'll go above Premium Sachiko because I found that interesting. We also learn that Five specifically chose Calamity Mary because of her rough circumstances. Over 30 years old, abused her daughter and her husband. They both left her, alcoholic and drugs and yakuza and all that nonsense, right? So Fav is actually getting up a bump up to C as well, above even I think right about Lady Proud level, because we get more of his perspective like we did with Fall. We learn that Fav is like a no-nonsense type of guy. He doesn't like to deal with some nonsense. And we see this throughout multiple of the stories. Like, he doesn't want to entertain Nemarine. He says he's always busy all the time. He obviously rose Cranberry to where she was now and groomed her to be that bloodthirsty menace that she was. We just see more of his thoughts about the whole game. It's nothing too drastic, mind you, but we get more than just the mascot says kill each other, so you should do that. So yeah, Five's great. The Cranberry Calamity Mary pseudo team up was pretty entertaining, and yeah, it was a pretty fun chapter in that sense. Next is Alice in Hardcore Land. This is a Nemarine and Hardcore Alice chapter, if the title didn't give it away. This is explaining how Alice got her bunny plushie. It was actually from a dream where she was chasing Snow White so endlessly that she kept dying along the way. But still forever and forever she chased. Nemarine ends up helping her out. And we see that Nemarine actually did meet Hardcore Alice before she passed on to her dreamlike state where she was sleeping in Mass Wonder's dream. But before Nemarine's physical body died, we did see that she did meet Hardcore Alice. She helped Hardcore Alice reach Snow White in the dream. and then that's where she got the bunny plushie from, because it turned into a bunny plushie and then appeared with her in the real world, which means Nemarine has the power to make people's dreams come true in a sense, and also affect the real world. She's more powerful than she seems. She just is too lazy and too laid back about everything, and that's why she reaches an eternal sleep pretty fast and unmarked, I guess. But yeah, I mean, Hardcore Alice, you're staying where you are. I think it's really cool how we got to understand why she valued that bunny plushie so much. Unfortunate that it was that bunny plushie that Minael turned into to then get Swim to kill Hardcore Alice. It just kind of ties a knot on the real meaning of that plushie, and also makes it even worse for Hardcore Alice when you think about her death, because she died from the bunny plushie, right? That she treasured so much because she was chasing Snow White, and that also led to her death inadvertently, weeks later, which is rough. But, pulling at the heartstrings, that's what Asari Endo likes to do, right? Yeah, so a pretty solid chapter. Also, I just realized the rabbit's foot that's kept Snow White alive, and Ripple alive, right? And was the rabbit's foot the item from Unmarked? There's a whole rabbit motif between Alice and Snow White there. Pretty great. Next is It Happens from Time to Tama. This is my favorite one from this book, because we get a Tama story, not in the perspective of Tama though, from a random middle school student called Chihiro. This is like Miharu to Tama, right? That friend that they end up meeting and becoming closer with, and then the said magical girl passes, right? So Chihiro, this is if you remember in episodes 5, the Pukin story had a first person perspective for the first time. This is also a first person perspective, but from Chihiro's perspective, and we see Chihiro is really calculative, almost like Princess Deluge in the way that she manages the rankings of the middle school class, like socially, right? So Chihiro realizes he's in the middle. She realizes he's in a group of friends of 6. One of those 6 ends up getting injured, and now in the group project that does pairs, she ends up being the one to volunteer to find a new person for their science project, or was it independent research project, I think. She ends up paired with Tama, and you still see her slander Tama, right? Tama is bad at everything, at athletics. He's not smart, and the series has done this before, where they say Tama is super unreliable. But we see that there is more to Tama than meets the eye. Sure, she's super nervous and hangs her head low and is unreliable and is only good at one thing, but she's really good at that one thing, and that one thing is digging holes, right? It was that one thing, digging holes, that killed Cranberry, because Tama dug a hole in her back, did her magic that opens 3 meters wide or 3 feet wide or whatever, and Cranberry, well, there was a lot of cranberry sauce everywhere, let's just say. But we see more of Tama. We see she actually has a passion for only digging holes. Her character's a joke, right? Her name is Tama Inu Bozaki, which is, Tama's a common name for a dog, and then Inu, it means dog in Japanese, I believe, which is part of her last name, Inu Bozaki. And obviously she has the whole dog motif in her magical girl, and she can dig with her power. She's basically like a whimpering dog, right? That's why she snuggles up to Ruler, and she does somewhat of the same to Chihiro. But we see Chihiro's opinion of Tama improve, because Tama, there is an earnestness to Tama that is just so appealing, right? And also Tama saves Chihiro twice. The first time in the library when the books are about to crush her, Tama transforms into a magical girl and saves Chihiro without Chihiro realizing. Secondly, Chihiro does realize it's Tama when Tama saves her from some guys who are trying to get feely with Chihiro, right? Um, so Tama, we learned Tama is max level in Magical Girl Raising Project, and I'm not sure if any of the other unmarked girls are, but I'm going to just assume that Tama is the only one at max level because it makes the story more interesting. So, Cranberry aside, we already know Cranberry is basically max level, right? But Chihiro gets interested in that whole business with Tama, and they hang out a little more and become friends. And Chihiro is worrying less about her social ranking and more just about, all right, I want to work on this project with Tama. I think I just hit my mic. Sorry. I want to work on this project with Tama. I want to continue just knowing her more. And we see that Ruler is influencing Tama in a good way through Chihiro's perspective. Um, so we see Tama's becoming more confident. She's actually trying to get involved in the sports during PE and gym class and everything like that. We see Tama dedicate herself to this report, and the other side story that had Ruler correcting Tama's mistakes on whatever report she was writing. It's actually used, that same report is used in this story with the same markings implied through the text in the book. That was the same one that Ruler helped Tama correct, and she shows it to Chihiro, and I was like, oh my goodness, it's all tied up and connected, and I don't know, it just made me happy. So Tama is improving because of Ruler, and you see that Ruler cares for Tama, and then you see Chihiro and Tama develop a little bit of some, a friendship, and you're cheering them on, right? So Tama, her one good talent, right, is digging holes. So you get this kind of comedic moment where she digs like a hole way too deep in like a mountain, and she brings Chihiro over, and Chihiro's like, "Whoa, this is a hole," and Tama's like, "Yeah, I dug it." And Chihiro's like, you dug something this far down? I can't even hear the rock fall and hit the floor. It's so far down. But Tom's like, yeah, no, I dug it because I like digging holes. And it's kind of emphasized throughout the chapter that she just likes digging holes, and she wanted to study soil, which is what their project is on. She wanted to study soil because she likes digging holes. Tama is so good as a magical girl digging holes that she pulls up fossils and gems and just kind of throws them aside because Tama's like that, right? She doesn't really think about the value, and Chihiro is thinking about the value. Chihiro's already thinking about a future partnership with Tama, and them selling the fossils and becoming of a higher social ranking, right? But again, all that kind of starts to fade away once she realizes who Tama is. She realizes that Tama is a magical girl after she saves Chihiro from those guys. And Tama doesn't quite get away in time before Chihiro spots her. But Tama comes back and as regular Tama, human Tama. And Chihiro thinks to herself that she wants to become a magical girl like Tama. And just work with her and be friends with her and connect with her, introduce her to her group of friends, and just show them all Tama's good points. And I was like, Chihiro, you're really a real one. If you were in here, which you're obviously not, but if you were in here, you'd probably be like A, because Tama deserves good, And she was right on the cusp. Every time I think of Tama, I just think of how she dies, man. Swim. I love to hate you. Tama is, honestly, the Tech Bell is really good, and Nanako-san is really good, and Shadow Gale is also really good and seems to have quite a large role in Queens. Tama's going up to S. That's just my strong bias, really speaking. More than Cranberry. Tama, Tama and May. Just maybe it's just short-haired, animal motif, kind of goofy. Doesn't really understand social situation. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe there's pattern recognition happening here. I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but whatever. I was just so happy that we got more Tama and that we actually got to see more of a human life besides the little teases. And it wasn't even from her perspective. I'm pretty sure the only time we got her perspective was when she died, which is tragic. But Tama's great. I'm sorry. I just like how I held myself back with Ruler. I held myself back with Tama, but this is an excuse to bump him up a bit. And then lastly, an interview with Swim Swim. This was just a little funny, somewhat funny, I guess, thing at the end here. Someone from the Magical Kingdom, I don't know if it was Cranberry or not. I don't think it was. Someone from the Magical Kingdom interviewed Swim Swim because she was a trainee magical girl, right? And they're asking all these questions, and Swim Swim is blunt and also can't read and goes by Ruler's teachings. So you have all these goofy and odd answers, right? They're asking, why did you become a magical girl? Oh, because I wanted to become a princess. And I'm following Ruler because she's a princess, and Ruler told me to say this. And, the interviewer's like, you probably shouldn't say all these things about Ruler. And it's just like a goofy, fun little chapter. It gives more of a human side to Swim Swim while also emphasizing her whole mindset and why she acts the way she does in Unmarked. So I actually really appreciated that. And a little addendum about Ruler I just remembered. When Palette is, scouting out End City for anime magical girls, he considers Ruler as someone, at the end of the chapter, he considers Ruler as someone who may have great potential if they get selected as a magical girl. And I find that hilarious because it's another joke on Ruler. The whole thing with Snow White's weapon. Ruler herself, right, is trying so hard to become great. She's recognized by Palette of all mascots that she may become great. And the whole reason that Ruler is great is because of Snow White's weapon, which is Ruler, named after the only magical girl who supposedly bested Snow White. I think I mentioned this a time or two ago. For Aces, I think I mentioned it, right? And now it's even emphasized more. That running joke with Ruler and then Ruler the weapon is so great. I love it. But yeah, anyway, interview with Swim Swim and gave just a little peek into that, human side and just her mindset for why she did the things that she did. Obviously, she took it to the extreme and is quite unredeemable. But Swim Swim is just so interesting, is an anomaly in how she thinks and acts. She stays up there. You love to hate her. How many times have I said it for Swim Swim at this point? But yeah. I really enjoyed this volume. Thank you, the anime, for existing, because we got a bunch of stories about the unmarked girls, and I always love more content exploring their more human lives outside of dire straits. Thank goodness for Peaceful Days. We love to see it, right? But this was a fun side volume. I think it's classified as 9.5 because it wasn't really planned. It was just some blog posts that got turned into chapters and then some new ones for, this book. And actually, you have a little fav decal or sign notification, whatever the word is, indicator. There we go. He has a little quick thing at the beginning of each chapter saying you can read this after you've watched episode blank of the anime pun. So it's actually directly meant to tie into the anime, like I said before. But yeah, I really enjoyed this volume, even if the middle, the Prince of the Club story was like the middle, of the peak to climb over it, so I can get back to stuff I really, really, really cared about. Again, nothing to slight against Winter Prisoner, Sister Nana. This is how I read, I guess. But I'm excited to get back into Queens. I actually have already read the first 2 chapters of Queens. Not Queens? Yeah, Queens. I cannot speak today. But I've already read the first 2 chapters of Queens. There's a lot of moving pieces. With already existing characters. So my Queens video is going to be just more shuffling of the characters, with the one or new 2 ones that we do need to consider. So glad to get back to the main story. I'm hoping this trilogy ends off with a bang. It's building up to something pretty big. So, I'm hoping for that payoff for Puck Puck and anyone else new, and all the moving pieces, which I won't really reveal here because it's not the volume we're talking about. Peaceful Days of 16 Magical Girls. You love to see it. It's pretty great. Tama, man, I would pat you on the head, Tama. I would say good job, well done, Tama, because you know what? You did a good job.